Coming up on the latest PL Express, nothing personal. London is red, and even Arteta says that his side are title contenders now. We'll talk about Manchester United's 9-game unbeaten run coming to an end, and why Cristiano Ronaldo was captain. Is Mo Salah back up to speed? Why Spurs are struggling against fellow top 6 teams? Pep's praise this week for Kevin De Bruyne, and much more. That's myself, Kay Murray, and Janusz Michallik. We're going to start by talking about that game between Chelsea and Arsenal. Janusz, finishing 1-0 to Arsenal. They are still at the top. They are 2 points clear. Do you love that bit of arrogance that the team have right now? You feel like you've not seen that in a while with this Arsenal side, and they've just got this belief, it seems, and this confidence in themselves that things are going to be okay.
Yes, and obviously that comes with confidence. I think I've been part of teams where managers always tell you, to be confident, to go out there and to do the job, and then you're capable of it. But until you start doing it, it's just coaches talk, right? And I think that's different right now because Arsenal have been continuously proving that they're capable, right? It's not just to say that we can, but knowing that you can, it's a whole different story. And we've talked about their character, we've talked about their spine, if you will, and look what's happening, right? I mean, this is and I know him. You go back to La Liga with Thomas Partey, and so do I. But I think we are seeing the best of Thomas Partey right now, where he's dominant in the center of the pitch. Xhaka continues to benefit from that because all of a sudden the pressure is not on him. Remember where Arsenal were struggling, right? It's and Granit Xhaka was struggling either with the fans or with the red cards and all that, because I think and as captain, I think that he couldn't hold on to that pressure. The team wasn't full or wasn't complete, if you will, and now we see that balance, and that goes all the way from the back, where how many times have you been saying that if you put all Arsenal center backs together, you wouldn't find one that's at the level that's required? Well, look what's happening right now. I mean, certainly William Saliba has been a revelation. Gabriel is thriving next to him. But think about it. I mean, they even have fullbacks who are center backs who can play just in case they need it, right? If you look at Ben White, and let's not forget Tomiyasu, who for Japan plays as a center back as well. So things and the narrative is changing because of the confidence and because of the plan that Mikel Arteta has told us about 3 or 4 years ago. But let's be honest, none of us believed it.
Yeah, and they're getting smarter as well. You mentioned in Checker, I mean, we'll see if it lasts, but that you can see moments where usually when he might have been riled up, he's getting a bit smarter to not letting that happen now and not hurting his team. So why do you think it is now that Miguel Arteta, who had been maybe a little bit more reserved about saying it, which is of course always smart, but suddenly he's saying himself, yes, we are title contenders. Why now?
Well, because I think he sees that his team is passing all those tests, right? I mean, ever so often they get knocked down. We saw that even recently in Europa League, maybe meaningless in some ways, but it wasn't for him because, once you get that buzz of winning, you want to continue doing that. So against PSV, they didn't. It didn't hurt them. They bounced, right? I mean, you look at this as a massive test, right? Everybody's looking, okay, let's see if Arsenal's for real. And we sort of say that because we're waiting for them to maybe lose 2 or 3, which, by the way, may happen again. But I think if it does, now Mikel Arteta can go back to some of those matches and say, okay, PSV this, or Saints a point away, which, as I've said over and over, it's a pretty good point away from home anyway. But now he can go back and say, well, look at Chelsea. We went to Stamford Bridge and we dominated Chelsea in every aspect of the game. I don't think it was even close, even though the score maybe doesn't indicate that. But I think if you look at within the statistics, the important statistics, it was all Arsenal.
Let's stick with statistics, and I want to talk about Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang facing his former team. Did you expect more from him? It was just 8 touches in 64 minutes on the pitch.
Well, I think I expect, obviously, right? Because even if you were called on Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang for a while, I think that what I would call a cameo at Barcelona, the few games that he played there, he looked like a player that's capable of getting back to his best. The best meaning that maybe the Dortmund years and the Arsenal years where he was dominant. He was scoring at will, even though Arsenal was just starting this process of rebuilding as well. So you think against your former club, at Stamford Bridge, at home, you'd feel like you have a point to prove. But again, I don't think Arsenal allowed him to do anything. Let's be honest. And let's talk about the center backs. The job they did on him was superb. But again, I don't think he went out of his way to do absolutely everything that's possible to show that he's still at the top echelon of strikers in the world.
All right. It's interesting that we're talking about him, though, as well, and going up against your former team. And I know when it comes to some of these commercials, you might be given a script as to what to say. But we did see Gabriel's tweet afterwards saying, "Nothing personal, London is red." And that was in response to the commercial that had gone out for the broadcaster in the UK, where Aubameyang had said, like, you know, nothing personal about going up against his former team. Do you mind Gabriel doing this? Because I feel like we see this a few times from Arsenal players now, that they respond after they win to messages they've seen in the media.
Yes, I think you have to be careful with that. I wouldn't be surprised if Mikel Arteta addresses that stuff inside with his team, because I think you still have to stay humble. Arsenal have.
You know what? I mean, maybe he addresses, but I don't know if he's behind it a little bit as well, because he's been using some of these media messages to get them riled up, I feel.
Yeah, well, he maybe uses that inside the dressing room, but he probably doesn't want that to go, because when you know, let's be honest, Arsenal haven't won anything just yet. So you have to be careful. And I think, you know, if you look at Mikel Arteta and the way he gives the press conferences, he doesn't give away anything, right? He obviously expectations are high, but he doesn't go out there saying, yes, we're on our way. I haven't seen that just yet. So I think he's going to be careful in terms of what the message that he sends to his players, to say, okay, it's great. I love the confidence. I love that you think that we're on our way, but just be careful here, because, you know, being humble in a league like in any league is what I would probably do, and that would be my message to the players.
Yeah, the message from Aubameyang was, Arsenal, nothing personal. I'm back. I'm blue. I'm ready. So I mean, maybe there could be some advice on to be a bit more careful with what you say before these games. As for Chelsea, only 2 points out of 12 in their last 4 games. Are you worried for Potter? When does the pressure start build on him? Because we do still have to remember, this is a side that isn't completely his. He is quite new. Where do you stand on this?
Yes, I think the pressure will come. He continues to have the same issues as Thomas Tuchel in terms of going forward, right? I think I understand, again, because we've seen it time and time again that, you know, some of the players that he's missing it's just making it difficult to play the way he wants to. I was glad to see that he went 4 in the back, right? And Sterling didn't have to be a wing back, but again, he was maybe one of the worst players on the pitch. I mean, it didn't help him when he was playing a wing back in the last couple of games. Yeah, you could use that as an excuse, but now in that formation where Potter went in with that little bit of a diamond in the midfield, didn't play well. Absolutely dominated in the center of the pitch. Jorginho couldn't tell what he was trying to do. Loftus-Cheek on the right hand side, Mason Mount very, very poor on the left hand side of that, and Kai Havertz, I'm just starting to wonder if he's going the way of Timo Werner. I mean, how many chances does he need really to get going consistently? Is he the sort of man that you continue to put your money on as you build this, right? Even when everybody's back. And as I've said, without Reece James, and now on top of that, you don't have Ben Chilwell, it really makes it difficult for Potter or anybody that would be there to say every game the formation just doesn't fit because these players aren't available. Then you have to play a lot of you guys out of position. So it makes it difficult. But this is Chelsea Football Club. Nobody's going to cry for them. They still spend a lot of money on their new ownership, and at the end of the day, I think Todd Bowley, as we've said it when he took over, he may be Roman Abramovich 2.0. I don't know how much patience he's going to have. By the way, I'm not sitting here and saying it's time to go for Graham Potter. Absolutely not. Look at Mikel Arteta. We all know it takes time. Ten Hag, you know, week in and week out. Yes, he's getting things right. Then the next thing, he gets lost within himself. But I think that you've got to give these managers a little bit of time.
Just before we finish on Chelsea Arsenal, I want to go back to speaking about Arsenal because I want to focus on Gabriel Jesus. No goals in his last 9. There has been no panic about this because of what he's been contributing to the team without his goals. Where do you stand on it, Janusz?
Well, I mean, we talk about this process and progress of Arsenal, and I think Gabriel Jesus. I continue to think that he's a significant player in every game, even if he's not scoring. This was another example of that. But I think we can all agree that Arsenal, if they want to go to that next level, being consistently in there as a challenger for the Premier League, in the Champions League, fighting for that title, will need a true number 9 because he isn't. Pep knew. I mean, there's no, there's one manager that I just go by because he hasn't let me down for the most part in terms of identifying players, right? In terms of maybe knowing what you can get out of them. Sterling comes to mind, and Gabriel Jesus as well, because he's not your true number 9. And I think it's almost unfair to think that he's going to be that sort of a player that's going to get you 25 goals or 30 goals consistently, as others do. And you almost have to have that. If you want to be at that level, you have to have the Mo Salah of the world, the Harry Kane of the world, the Erling Haaland of the world. You have to do that. And I think that Gabriel Jesus could do with the ability to play through the middle, but also wide, which he often does, right? I mean, I was actually frustrated with Gabriel Jesus just a little bit in the last couple of games because he kept on drifting left into the space of Martinelli, who's been outstanding and who doesn't need anybody to come into his space. In fact, you want to take players away from there because of his ability to take players one-on-one. So I think that they need a bona fide number 9. I'm not going to say when. I'm also not going to sit here and say that Arsenal aren't capable of staying at the top of the table without that striker, whoever it may be. But I think it's unfair to think that Gabriel Jesus is the man if you going forward.
Let's move on to talk about Aston Villa against Manchester United. Great start for Unai Emery with Villa, but what went wrong for United? Do you think that they're just less competitive when Erik ten Hag is forced to switch things up due to player absences?
Well, he's lost himself in the last game, making all kinds of changes in the second half of Manchester United, obviously against the Real Sociedad. That was kind of funny to see. Well, funny to some, maybe not to others, because I thought he was finally getting the feel for his team. And then in the second half, he was making substitutions that nobody understood, I think, including the players. In this one, that start from Villa under Unai Emery was something that it's hard to recover from. The one thing that I got, and sometimes it's simplistic to look at it this way, but why dig deep if it's right in front of you, right? And I think we saw how important Bruno Fernandes is to this team. I mean, you could just watch this game and forget when they conceded because it was 2 quick goals. By the way, on a counter, it's not like Villa created a ton. They were just so efficient with these chances. 3 incredibly good goals, kind of on the break, sort of the way Unai Emery plays. But then after that, I just think without Bruno Fernandes, it changes the role of Christian Eriksen, who also is very important. Because Christian Eriksen, as deep as he played, because we were wondering, right, if in the absence of Bruno Fernandes, is Eriksen going to go a little bit higher? Then we found out that Danny van de Beek started the game. And once again, we found out that they're not going to recover him. Let's just be honest here. And if you're Donny, not that he's going to take my advice, but I think he needs to look at elsewhere. That's just not going to work. So without Bruno Fernandes, it almost seemed to me that Eriksen was trying to do too much, and that link between the midfield and the front players was just missing.
A few weeks ago, we wouldn't have believed, I don't think, that Cristiano Ronaldo would be captain for this team. It seems a little bit strange. It looks like it was by default. And then afterwards, Ten Hag even mentioned the players that were missing or the fact that certain players are more new. So you're not going to give them the captain's armband just yet. And there's 2 sides to this. First of all, were you surprised to see Ronaldo as captain? And second of all, do you feel that Ten Hag explains too much sometimes afterwards?
Yes and yes. Look, let's address it once again. I think in the end, Erik ten Hag is probably doing this in the right way, because when these two separate, when Ronaldo leaves, it's not, Erik ten Hag at least will be able to say, look, I've given him chances. I tried every which way for this to work. even though deep down I knew it wasn't going to, right? So that's one. But again, I just didn't understand, the situation. Even Cristiano Ronaldo playing the full game, because once you saw that it's not working, the starting of Cristiano Ronaldo, okay, I can live with that, because I still believe that he's a player that in 1 or 2 games is going to come good, because he has been one of the greatest players that played that game, and he hasn't forgotten that. If he gets that perfect service, if that ball is timely through and he latches onto it, I think he's gonna do that for Manchester United. But as the game went on and it looked that you needed to recover it, why was he on the pitch so long? You still see Rashford play on the right hand side. You see Martial that all of a sudden comes in and plays alongside of him. I don't think that was a smart decision, because you tried, it didn't work, and then it's Cristiano Ronaldo. He's had the courage when he first came in to kind of send a message that you're not part of this starting 11 in the most important games. And now he's reverting back to sort of saying, yeah, I don't know if I wanted that reaction that I saw, you coming off and pouting or not being happy in front of the whole world. So I just didn't get it. I think he needs to be consistent. I think he's got players now in Martial and Rashford that can do a better job. And he needs to send that message to those players, because how do you grow? I mean, we've seen better from Marcus Rashford. We've seen that the way he looks, the way he plays, how happy he is. And now all of a sudden he's playing left side, right side, sometimes through the middle when Ronaldo is not there. Now Martial comes in, and that all complicates, I think, the progress that he needs to make with Manchester United.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And yeah, with Casemiro, he just said he's a natural captain, but his English isn't up to the level yet for me to give him the captain's armband. But once again, he explained a lot of it. He's very, very honest, I think we found, with Erik ten Hag afterwards.
Bruno, I mean, he's the only leader on that team that I see right now. You're quite right in saying with Casemiro. Language, okay, I get that. I probably wouldn't care as much in that game. I would give it to Casemiro, because he's been growing in stature already. And I think what a message that would have been. Think about it. If he said, Casemiro, you just got here, but the way you play,
so you can lead by example, and it doesn't matter if you're not
you play like a captain. And here's the man that has the experience, has won everything there is to be won. So that's why. But this is the problem. You continue to tiptoe around Cristiano Ronaldo, where everyone in the world, including probably some of the players in the dressing room, know exactly what needs to be done. And that needs to be the divorce between the two parties.
Liverpool got a win over Spurs. Mo Salah is looking like he is very much back up to speed now. This is his recent tally: 9 goals in 8 games. We've got 14 goals and 5 assists in all competitions this season, and 44 goals and 14 assists against the Premier League's Big Six. It's a 4-game scoring streak for him as well. So is he back?
Well, he is back. The numbers say so, right? I mean, it's much different. And it's funny in the system. Again, it was a front three, which Klopp likes to play. And before the game, I'm sure you and everybody else said, well, who's playing through the middle? Because you really, I mean, you had 3 number 9s. I don't know if I put Salah there, but he's thriving in that position. Ever since he's been moved into the central role, either in the 4-3-3 system, but more so in that 4-4-2 or variation of that 4-2-3-1, he's been thriving there and scoring goals. And then you have Nunez, who's a number 9, and you have Firmino, who is a number 9. Maybe not traditional. I think we've gone through this when he was coming from Hoffenheim, and he wasn't really in that position, but he's grown to play and link up in that position. So I saw Firmino on the right, Nunez on the left, and Mo Salah through the middle. And somehow that worked. Even though if it didn't, I'd probably be saying differently. I'd be saying, well, wait a second here. Look you have 3 number 9s. Why is so-and-so not playing there? So it's funny how football works sometimes. But Mo Salah certainly is thriving in that position where he's getting freedom, going through the middle and really roaming around. And everybody's benefiting from that.
Yeah, it's good to see. On the flip side, though, let's talk about Spurs. What's their problem when it comes to the struggles against fellow top 6 sides?
Well, you can't win without 4 or 5 key players. You just can't. Now, Liverpool has had that issue, but they're much deeper, so they can somehow change things around and still have somebody like Mo Salah. Spurs have Harry Kane. In that game, he's proven that even without key players, he's one of the best in the business, not just in the Premier League, but everywhere. But you saw what Kulusevski did, right? The moment he came in, the reaction from the fans, you may say, well, it's a simple pass to release Harry Kane there. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But if it's so simple, why aren't other players doing that? But without Son, without Cristiano Romero in the back, without Richarlison, and let's face it, without Kulusevski to start the game, you're talking about 4 players that no team in the world can afford to lose and have a chance to beat a team like Liverpool, even though Liverpool maybe aren't at their best, but they're kind of coming back just a little bit. So to me, it's really that simple, because if I start looking deeper for things that doesn't exist, that would just make me look silly, I think.
Let's talk about Manchester City. Erling Haaland scoring his 23rd goal of the season, 18 now in the Premier League. And Kevin De Bruyne, I feel like it's always these two we're talking about every week, and rightfully so. We were talking about Pep's criticism of Kevin De Bruyne last week, saying that maybe he can give more still than he has been given. But Pep said after this game that Kevin De Bruyne put this team on his shoulders. And you could see that celebration and the euphoria from Pep afterwards. He got through a game with a win that perhaps he thought he wasn't going to at one point.
Pep smart. Challenged him the other way. Yeah, great goal from a free kick, but I need more. I need more. And the reason he says that, because he knows that Kevin De Bruyne is by far the most important player for Manchester City. Erling Haaland, we can sit here and talk about his quality, his goals. Without Kevin De Bruyne, and none of that happens. And I'm not even talking about the relationship and the partnership those two have struck up so quickly, right? Because remember, there was a goal, Kevin De Bruyne, what a cross and a header, inches or millimeters offside somehow. But we've seen this movie before, and we're going to continue to see that. So he understands that Kevin De Bruyne is obviously needed for Haaland to be as successful. Not to say that Bernardo Silva can't do it, and Gundogan and all the players, but look, if Manchester City are going to continue to win the Premier League and win the Champions League, Kevin De Bruyne has to be at his best. Kevin De Bruyne at his best, for me, nobody like him. Nobody like him. And again, we have to say it, that 10, 15, 20 years from now, I am not 100% sure that we're going to be talking about Kevin De Bruyne as one of those historical legends of the game. And we should be. That's the unfortunate part. But anyway, I think Pep Guardiola knows exactly what he's doing. He knows that he's got a gem of epic proportion. And that's not Erling Haaland. That's Kevin De Bruyne.
You mentioned the knockout games. You mentioned the Champions League. I think it's really interesting to hear that Pep said afterwards, and he showed that he's well aware of the risk in these knockout games, because on João Cancelo's sending off, he said his players can learn not to give the opponent something. And then he said, because in a knockout game, we could be out. So you can see, and obviously, of course, it's Manchester City. They want to win the Champions League, but he sent a message to say, don't do something stupid that could cost us. Mm-hmm. Like if this was a knockout game. And I feel as though he's already looking at all the little factors that could prevent them winning the Champions League this season.
Well, let's assess that. I mean, that's individual with João Cancelo. Obviously, you don't want to do that. But, the way they play with such a high defensive line, you're going to benefit from that on a number of occasions, right? But it's an inherent risk that you take. And that's what happened. Cancelo probably wanted to, to get there and defend that. But, the way it happened, it's almost, I want to say it's one of those incidental ones. It's just because it happened again. Remember, I mean, a high line in the second half. I don't know if you remember her. I think it was, Harry Wilson. But this time it was Ake. It was same identical situation, just Wilson missed the goal by inches on the far post. But, that's what happened. So it could be Cancelo, could be anybody else. So, yes, he may direct that towards Cancelo, but he also has to be honest with himself. I'm talking about Pep Guardiola, and to say, okay, how do we cover for each other if that does happen? How do we recover? Because that isolation one-on-one was there twice. Once they paid the price for it, and the second time, fortunately, they didn't. But that's the risk reward do you take if you Manchester City? Because they do play the highest line in the league. Liverpool does it as well, but I think Manchester City, I mean, look at that line. It's pretty much halfway line on the red card. And the second situation that was talking, it was maybe 5 yards inside their own half, maybe, but pretty much on the halfway line. So I think that's what Pep Guardiola has to think about more than the fact that, okay, you're asking your players to take such risk, and then you also asking them to recover and be absolutely perfect when you know that if you play against Nkunku, that they will play obviously in the next round, or maybe PSG, and you're going to face Mbappe. Yeah, you're going to have to strike that balance of saying that maybe that line needs to be a little bit lower. Maybe I've got to help my players not to be in a position like this. So I think it's a little bit unfair, but I also think that Pep didn't really go to Cancelo and say, I think you're crazy in what you did, because I don't know if he did much. I think it was the opposition that forced him in particular. Could have been anybody else. It was almost Nathan Ake to do that.
We'll move on to give some credit to Newcastle. I know we've been doing so for the last few weeks, but it turns out we're going to have to continue doing this. But I want to make it specifically this week about Miguel Almiron. He scored in 4 straight now. It's 7 goals in 7 matches. His 7 in 7 is as many as in his previous 76 games. So what is this change down to?
I think it's simple. It's a good manager, a better manager that they've had previously, a better team. And a player who probably deserved it, right? Because remember, Steve Bruce loved him. I remember him saying something to the effect of, I wish I had 11 Almirons on my team because of the work ethic, his attitude in training, in the games, that smiling face. I mean, think about that. I mean, he wasn't always a starting player, but his attitude towards that was, I'm going to get there sometime, and when I do, I'm going to take advantage of that. So every manager loves to have a player like that. But if you look at the players around him, it just makes it so much easier. Even that goal, on the counter, and I think Sean Longstaff was involved, and then Callum Wilson with that little bit of flick to send them through, is just a confident player that has pace, that has technique, and that can finish. I mean, you and I know him here from United States. And I'm not comparing the two, but that was a pretty good team that played in a similar way under Tata Martino here.
Yeah, Atlanta United.
Joseph Martinez and Almiron, who was just darting through. I mean, this is the sort of goal that Almiron, I've seen him score how many times, you and I, right? I mean, This is perfectly in his wheelhouse, exactly that sort of goal. So I think everybody, all the neutrals at least, are very happy to see that this particular player is getting rewards for just the way he trains and plays and how much heart and he gives to this game.
Janusz, if you're looking to treat yourself for Christmas, Liverpool's up for sale. Big news today. What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, I mean, we've heard some rumors, and obviously it's fresh. I was trying to think about it. I mean, there could be some positives depending on what sort of owners are going to come in. Is it just going to be third party, and maybe Fenway Sports Group is going to be just helped, or if it's a sale outright? What sort of owner? Is this a state owner that I think Liverpool owners will not be happy about? We're just talking about Newcastle, right? And I know fans are fans. They just want their team to play well, but that's certainly not going to sit well with a lot of the people as well. Or maybe it's just a different owner that's going to actually take Liverpool to that next level, because we all know that there are limitations to Liverpool. There are 2 or 3 years where they could match Manchester City, but now Manchester City is getting away because FSG obviously is not willing to fight and spend the sort of money that Newcastle are spending, will spend, Manchester City, and some others, right? I mean, I think there's a realization at FSG that the game went to a different level, and we want to run Liverpool in a fiscally responsible way. But that may not be possible if we have to continue to spend like others, right? So let's see what group is going to come in right now, but also how's that going to benefit? not benefit, but what the relationship is going to be with Jurgen Klopp. He has had a great relationship with John Henry and FSG. Is he going to look at that and say, well, that's not for me. That's not how I want to do it. So yes, just so many unanswered questions right now. We will see which direction and what FSG is going to do. Are they going to be conscious of looking at prospective buyers in a way that is going to be okay with the Liverpool supporters? They're going to look specifically for somebody that has the well-being and the heart of Liverpool in mind, or are they just going to sell to the highest bidder? That's going to be interesting to me.
Yeah, it really is. We'll keep our eye on it here on Premier League Express as always. Thank you so much for being with us. Janusz and I'll see you again next week.
Thank you very much for watching ESPN FC on YouTube. For more highlights, analysis and exclusive content, be sure to subscribe.